We are live.
All right, thank you. Okay, so welcome everybody to our first meeting after the beginning of school on September 3rd. We will start with the President's report. I would like to remind everybody that on Monday, September 7th, there will be no school. Our next meeting, our official business meeting, is on September 10th, starting at 7 o'clock. We will be going via YouTube again. And then our next work session is on October 1st, starting at 6 p.m. It will be determined at that time if we are in person or YouTube, or we'll determine before that time if we're in person or YouTube. And then October 8th, we have our next business meeting. So are there any other dates of anything that I may be missing?
Jennifer, I have a couple of extra dates. And so board members, on the 18th of September, we're going to have the reveal of the Hall of Fame class of 2020. So the Hall of Fame committee has made their selections, and they've made Doug Bray and his team aware of who the nominees are for 2020. So there'll be a virtual reveal of that class. That'll be on that Friday. And then also, board members, we need to hold our tax rate hearing before the end of September. You know, in the state of Missouri, tax rate hearing has to be held before the start of October to allow us to levy a tax. We've looked at the date of Monday, the 28th of September. That allows Dwight to get the data and then for us to post that date for 10 days as required before the date of the meeting. So September 28th, and just wanted your feedback on the time of the meeting. We had talked about 5 o'clock, but then got feedback that was too early. So we're thinking about a 6 o'clock start time for the tax rate hearing on the 28th, and just wanted to open that up and see if that worked for everybody.
That works for me.
Yeah, that works for me too.
That'll work.
If it's a Zoom meeting, it's okay. Well, I think it'll be fine for me. It's
What was that date again? I'm sorry.
28th of September.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't see that being a problem.
Lisa?
That works for me. Yep. I had to check my calendar.
Good.
That works for me.
Good. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, September 28th, 6 p.m. Thank you.
All right. Then if there's no other dates that anybody needs to announce, we'll go ahead and move on to our 2.02, the Board of Education Communication Planning. Mr. Bray, we will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for allowing me to present tonight. I will quickly, this is fun for me because I get to run my own PowerPoint presentation. Usually people are asking me to move the presentations for them. So I just wanted to go through and give a couple of updates of sort of where we are with the process. And so as you can imagine, over the past year and a half since we've been working through the process, we've had a lot of changes that have gone on throughout the world. And so you'll sort of see the progress that we've gone and the progress that we've made, and then sort of the future steps that we have as part of this presentation. So just to give you an update, the first time that we presented to the board, it was Michelle Mueller and I, and we presented last July, sort of outlining and getting some ideas of what sort of communication goals that you would like to have as a board. And then we met again in September and then November to go over the data. We did develop a communications plan with 2 goal areas for the board. And then we created survey questions for families, and the survey was conducted in September of 2019. And then we presented those survey results to you, and then plans to implement the plan in November. So this is where we were. I wanted to leave off sort of where we were. This is the slide that I had, where we were and where we were planning to go. So we were continuing our communications plans until winter break, and then planning to implement in January. And we would continue throughout the 2019-2020 school year. And then at the end of the school year, we would have an assessment, to take a look at how we've done based on survey data with our communication goals, and then evaluate. The plan was to evaluate it in June of 2020. But then unfortunately, we had a global pandemic right in the middle of the communications plan. And so, you know, we it's been the busiest spring and summer that our department has ever had. I can't even imagine. It's been absolutely, and I put this in on my report, just in my notes. It's been unbelievably busy. And so I can give you an update of sort of where we've been as we've been through the plans. And some of the plans actually have come to fruition through the pandemic. And so I'll go through those slides as well. But so just to take a look back as a reminder, we had two goal areas sort of that the board agreed in terms of the communication goals. Goal number one was communications with all stakeholders with fidelity, which means that everyone would be receiving messages with similar tools at the secondary schools. We determined that a lot of people were receiving different messages in different ways, and some students were receiving text messages, some were receiving emails from the teachers, some were receiving things from our student data system. So we were trying to really make sure that we were consistent with the way that we were communicating. And goal number two was ensuring that our at-risk students would have success in Ritenour schools. And so with those goal areas, then we drilled down and we had some objectives. And so under goal number one, our objective was setting clear communications expectations with the middle school and high school teachers and staff members. And then we were agreeing that we wanted to make sure that our staff members were consistently communicating with our families using consistent tools and consistent timing. The other one of the strategies as part of that objective was making the extraordinary among a secondary staff in the Ritenour School District. And so we were pushing out communications geared towards helping staff want to go above and beyond every day for our families. And we did have our secondary schools build these communication strategies into their improvement plans last year. So taking a look at sort of where we made sort of steps towards those goals. Like I said, there are some like positives that came, and as strange as that sounds, in terms of the communications goals from the pandemic. The closure really caused schools to take a look and reevaluate and streamline their communications methods with families. So schools now, after meeting with the schools, they're united from K through 12 on using consistent communication tools to connect with families. And this is due to the virtual learning and the distance, the communication that we had with our families during the school closure. So I know at the elementary school level, they've all agreed to use Class Dojo, and it's an app a parent can use on their mobile device, and they can receive emails from. Like our children have used it. My personal children have used it. We really enjoyed it. We went through taking a look at several different apps with that. And the secondary schools are going to continue to rely on Google Classroom to communicate with families. And so we've also developed a landing page for all of our schools, so people can easily, and our families can easily find the information that they need to communicate with our schools and our teachers and to find their Google Classrooms. Objective number two is currently in progress. Originally, our goal was to continue to build district ambassadors. So we wanted to have ambassadors that would work, and they would go take the extra mile and sort of make that extra ordinary within our district. While the objective is still in progress, we do have some positive data to report, and I can show that on one of the following slides. But Dr. Kilbride provided a weekly video update, and we provided weekly written updates every Friday during the pandemic closure, all the way through July. And well, actually through May, and then we had bi-weekly updates through July. We survey data showed that 90% of our staff surveyed in late May, which was on, the survey closed on May 29th. They indicated they were satisfied with communications received from our district during the closure. And so I have a quote here, and it's a little bit small to read, but from our staff, it made our team feel really good. It says, "I have been impressed with the Ritenour School District's communication, planning, transparency, and concern shown for its employees, students, and families during this time. I work in multiple districts and have found that I can rely on Ritenour School District for clear, frequent, and compassionate communication during a time of uncertainty, which is very much appreciated." And so, just taking a look back, that was one of those comments that I shared from the survey with our team, just helping them feel good about the amount of work and the time that we've spent in working with our staff and communicating with our team. We do have a survey that's planned. So this survey data is a little bit old. It comes from May of 2020. We do have a new survey that's planned for families between September 28th and October 9th. So we're going to open up a survey, going to ask many more questions related to the distance learning as we've gone through.
What were those dates?
September 28th through October 9th were the dates that we were planning on having the survey open, the second survey open for families.
Thank you.
And we'll also, in addition to families, we'll also have surveys for students as well as for our staff members. I think I said this, so staff, students, and families. So goal area number 2 was ensuring that at-risk students will have success in Ritenour schools. And so this one was a little bit more challenging due to the closure and the pandemic for us. We've defined our at-risk families as those with 2 or more grades with a D or an F, 1 or more out-of-school suspension, and an attendance rate of less than 85%, just to make sure that we defined our at-risk students.
Is it Doug?
Yes.
So that was an or, not an and. In other words, if they fell in any one of those categories, they were considered at risk, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So if it's a D or an F, or 1 or more out-of-school suspensions, or an attendance rate of less than 85%.
Okay.
And so those are the families that we identified and the families that we surveyed whenever we sent out the survey in the fall of 2019.
Okay, thank
you. Oh, you're welcome. So far, it's been very difficult to measure with our students the last quarter. We missed the last quarter of the school year. We do have the survey results gathered in October of 2020. We do have evidence of our middle schools, including their strategies and their CSIP plans. And the schools were engaging regularly with our students during online learning. But as of the measuring, the tools that we have to measure this is very difficult. So we need to do some more work as we move forward to have some more solid measurements of sort of where we're at with our goals.
Doug,
Yes.
did you mean the surveys are going to be gathered in October 2020? Or
I
is it-
apologize. That was a mistake from my part. It is actually the survey results were gathered in October of 2019.
Okay.
And so there was an error on that slide. I apologize.
Okay, just making sure.
So taking a look at the statistics from the from a survey, the survey closed in late May on May 29th. And it shows that 90% of parents were very satisfied or satisfied with our communications in response to the pandemic. Now, we have not remeasured this data and we've not asked families to give us their opinion again. So we will do that and we'll be able to report that data to you later this fall. And so this, like I said, this was not from the school closure. So this data is from May, from the closure. So in terms of our next steps of working with you as the board on these goals, we want to continue to work with our schools to standardize their communication methods and use consistent communication tools. So far this school year, we're 2 weeks in, and we've found that our schools are using the consistent tools during distance learning. And we're going to continue to recognize our outstanding staff members going above and beyond for Ritenour students and families on our district communication channels. In terms of goal number 2, we're going to reevaluate the data after students move back to phase 1 of the full-time in-person school. We could also take some time, possibly whenever if we've moved into phase 2 for a long period of time where students are in a hybrid format, that we could also gather that data and send surveys and talk to those students as well. We do anticipate a lot of needs from our at-risk families as students transition back from phase 1 or phase 3 to phase 2 to phase 1 learning. And based on the duration of our all virtual and our hybrid learning, the survey might need to be sent to families again. So we're anticipating that when we move from phase 3 to phase 2 to phase 1, that we will have to send new surveys to families to get updated data. And so I spoke fairly quickly and I apologize. It's been a lot of Zoom meetings today. So I'm open to any questions that you might have right now concerning the reports.
You answered all of them.
So board members, if there are no questions, we'll come back to you after we do this work. If it's the board's interest to keep this communication goal as a goal area, as Doug said, we wanted to follow through with this, but there have been so many issues that had popped up over the course of this last school year. We were on track to compile the data in June, but then March 17th was our last official day of school. So if the board desires to keep communication as a goal area, we'll continue to do the work to track the data, to make sure that the strategies are implemented if the board wants to continue to keep this a focus.
I do.
I would say yes,
Mhm.
especially now.
Yeah, I ditto that, because I think most definitely now with everything is the time to be more vigilant in our communication,
Mhm.
and not so much backing off, and then being more standardized surrounding some of that. Even in regards to, I know that there are some buildings that sent out virtual learning expectations, meaning like, okay, dress appropriately, make sure you have your system muted or those type of things. Some buildings did send out that information, but are there opportunities even in that to be more consistent from a district level so that we can, our buildings may feel like they have more support in that process?
That topic came up in the Zoom meeting with our administrators this afternoon, and building principals said just that. You know, it was more focused at the secondary level, but they did ask for more support from the district to push out messaging from the district level about those expectations, because that didn't come out from us. It was left to building. So I think we can do better there.
Thank you.
I mean, it's good for have it come out from central office, but it doesn't hurt for it to come out from the principals too, because, you know, those kind of things are good to hear more than once.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I think with central office taking the lead and then buildings being able to personalize the message to their community, you know, that's the way that it should look. And I think we can make it happen that way.
Okay. Anything else?
On a
Okay.
positive communication note, if I could throw this in there, Ms. Lonis, we held our virtual town hall at 5 o'clock tonight for our Spanish-speaking families, and got up to 119 participants on that
Oh,
Zoom.
wow.
So to help Spanish-speaking families troubleshoot some of the technology issues that are popping up, as well as you know, some of the glitches, questions, and concerns that have come up from 4 days of school. So 119 participants. It was a great hour and 15 minutes. And so just want to recognize Doug and his team, want to recognize Julie Hahn, want to recognize everybody that was involved in pulling that town hall together. We agreed that we would hold those on a monthly basis to make sure that we're connecting with our families for which English is not their first language.
I have a question. So, you had that today with 119. Is there a way for those 919, if they, I don't know how your town hall went, what it went over, but suppose, you know, they thought it was all good, but then when they go and try it, it doesn't work. Is there a way for them to still get in touch with somebody to help them?
Yeah, you know, so I think what we saw, it was a lot of very specific questions that were specific to families and children. So there were some clusters that came up, like specifically students getting knocked off, you know, dropping the connection. That was one cluster of responses that came up. But in terms of like a follow up and when they try the strategies that are being implemented, we realize that we need to have more support for Spanish speaking families in the technology department. So we're working through a strategy to get a person who is bilingual to work at the help desk from 3 to 5 in the afternoon every day, so that we can push out to families that when you try these strategies that are being recommended, that if it doesn't work, you've got somebody who can easily communicate with you every day to help you troubleshoot it.
Yeah, that sounds great. I just, when you said you're going to hold them monthly, I'm thinking, oh my, are they going to have to wait till another month to get their questions answered if they had some from this meeting? So good.
And it's also a credit to Aria Maltman. So Aria has been a longtime supporter of families here in the district. She led and facilitated the meeting, did great work. And so I know our families rely pretty heavily on Aria.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, is there a need for us to have something like that for our general?
English speaking.
Yeah, English. I'm like, I don't know what everybody else kind of thing. Because I've seen, you know, some frustration out on social media and just trying to make sure that they have the correct ways to contact in and everything. So I know that the first day was probably very busy for the technology department, and hopefully it's slowed down a little bit, but just even thinking if it's something that we could do for, everybody.
We had that conversation the first couple of days, the technology support line, the volume of calls that were coming into that technology support line, there was some frustration where people weren't able to get through. So we're continuing to monitor the number of calls that are coming in through that technology support line. Like, I think the communication strategy is best around this work because so many of the questions are so specific. Like the hour and 15 minutes was really less than 15 minutes of me speaking, less than 15 minutes of Ms. Hahn, less than 15 minutes of Dr. Harlan. And it was really question after question that was pretty specific. So that's the only concern I have about town halls is sometimes when I'm hearing a question from somebody else that doesn't apply directly to me and what I need, then people have the potential to tune out. I'm not saying that happened here, but I think the technology helpline is the best strategy if people can get in there, if they can get through and get the feedback that they need. But we're continuing to monitor it.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. We will move on to 2.03 and our parents as teacher with Dr. Stewart.
Well, good evening to
Good
everyone.
evening.
Good evening.
So our vision is to work in partnership with our parents and community to produce graduates who become productive citizens and lead lives of personal integrity and fulfillment. And our mission is that we will continue to collaborate and ensure that learning occurs in a supportive environment for our students so that they can think critically, solve problems, and develop the knowledge and skills necessary for success in our diverse global society. So if we go to our program goals, the first two are goals from last year as well. We want to continue to increase Ritenour family participation in our Parents as Teachers program. We want to continue to increase developmental screenings of our children from age 0 to 5 because we know early intervention is critical. And also, Mr. Aiken and I added a goal for this year is to also increase engagement of families in virtual learning or virtually through home visits as well. So the next slide with our first goal, you will see the school years from 2015 to 2019, and you will see that we've conducted home visits. In 2019-20, it decreased, and really our participation was really impacted by staffing changes and the pandemic during the 2019-20 school year. One part-time educator transitioned to screenings, and so home visits also stopped for a month from March 15th to April 15th. So you can see the home visits that were conducted in 2019-20 for children 0 to 3, 360, and children 3 to 5, 405. But our parents as teachers, educators continue to check in with families via Zoom, Facebook, Messenger, phone calls during that time, and supporting our families with lesson planning, requests for food from Ritenour Co-Care, and then even diapers. So there was lots of connections with families, but the home visits were tremendously reduced due to the pandemic and staffing changes. If we look at the next slide, to have a closer look at the family participation, if we look at the first, the second column with the low need services, you'll see some families you can call and you can provide some resources to, but then we have high need services for some families that have characteristics on the approved high need characteristics list of maybe low income, low education attainment, or single parent households. So the high need services, we have to make sure that we do a home visit and then have opportunities for parent connection events so that we're reaching out to families. For an example, in the 2018-19 school year, we were able to have 20 connection events with families at Ritenour School for Early Childhood Education, for example, some night play date nights. But during the 2019-20 school year, we had to cancel several, including kindergarten readiness events and summer play dates due to COVID-19. But I have to say we're on a good track since May. We have had some 156 virtual home visits. The state had to actually train the educators to conduct virtual home visits. And so there was 156 home visits in May, June, and July. That doesn't include August. So if we go to program goal 2, our goal again is to increase the developmental screenings of children ages 0 to 5. And we're happy to say that we have exceeded in 2019-20 the number of screenings for parents as teachers. And in order to do that, Mike Aiken actually created an online screening that parents can do on their phones. So that was very beneficial for families. And then parents as teachers also continues to meet with families via Zoom, Google Meet, or even phone calls to families. If we go to the next slide, we see that our program data summary in 2019-20, it was lower based on what we talked about, the staffing changes and the pandemic. But then the children referred for evaluation has increased because we have an SSD team that's dedicated to supporting our students with special needs this past year. That has been very beneficial for screening our students that may have special needs. If we go to our financial trend, we see that we have been allocated, we were allocated with $115,814. We have that same allocation next year. Due to the pandemic, the state is giving the same allocation to the schools. So if we look at our summary, what we talked about, we want to continue to increase our program participation and family visits for our students. We also want to continue to increase the number of screenings. We're in a good trend with that, but we want to continue that. We know that our parents as teacher budget allocation will be the same next year. We want to support our families with online learning, with resources, websites for families, videos that they can look at, as well as maybe some language skills that students can have practice at home are some examples. We definitely want to continue the Parents as Teachers program because it empowers our parents to become their child's #1 advocate and teacher, and we want to continue that partnership with our families. Do we have any questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Ruth.
Okay. I was just wondering, when you look at the years, and I was just wondering, like, especially program goal #1, like all the years went down. I understand why the pandemic year 1920 went down. But it seems like when you look, each year is going down. I was just wondering what the reason for that is, you know, the family participation.
Yeah.
I just wondered if that can be attributed to anything. Do we know why?
Well, information that I have is just there's been some changes with staffing over the last few years. I know that one part-time educator that transitioned to screenings, I know that even though she was part-time, she did as many home visits as a full-time person. So my understanding, there's been some changes with staffing that's been impacted.
So Mike LaChance, can you speak on the certification piece? There was a couple of years in there too. There were some state certification lags that caused the staff members to have to wait until they could be certified to have those home visits.
Yeah, so they need to attend the conference and get certification. I can give you an example. Last year, we were down a staff member and then had someone in process to recommend for hiring, and then that person found another position. And then by the time they were certified to begin doing home visits, it was February, and Mike was tracking the data. By January, we were already down 70 families based on being down that one person. So Mike and I worked with Ken last year to ensure that we had actually additional staff available to try to hedge that effect when we were having transitions in staffing. That was the big effect that would slow us down during that time.
Okay. Thank you.
I was just getting clarification up on the home visits. Are we doing those virtually now, or are we back to doing some type of form of modified visit at the home?
Still virtually now.
Okay.
Still virtually, yeah.
And is that the practice that's recommended right now by the Parents as Teachers organization, or how does that work?
Yes, that's the recommendation at this point. And that's why they are okay with some phone calls that you can make now as well, because there's no actual home visits right now. It's through, it's virtually through Google Meet and Zoom phone calls.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Dr. Stewart.
You have a question?
Did you say thank you, Ruth?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's why I said thank you, Dr. Stewart.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Moving on, we have our agenda review for next week's business meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Lonis. So board members, up on the screen, you see the draft agenda for the September business meeting. We're going to have our first school of the month. We're fully virtual next week as well. Our first school of the month is going to be Iveland. And so Ms. Clover and Doug Bray have been working with Ms. Conley, the principal at Iveland, and Ms. Larios Bell, the new assistant principal at Iveland, to put together a YouTube video to show some of the work that's going on with the staff and the students of Iveland. So looking forward to sharing that video with you next week on the Zoom session. We'll have our standard set of reports. One of the things that I assume will come up in the MSBA report, board members, is that the guidance on the MSBA virtual conference, there was an email that came out today. So if you've not checked your Ritenour Gmail account, I would encourage you to do so. It's got some guidance on that MSBA virtual conference. Also, congratulations to the board. We received your plaque for governance excellence from MSBA. We received that this week from MSBA. So look forward to presenting that to the board when we're back together at in-person meetings, and those governance awards are posted here in the hallway of the admin center. In addition to receiving the Team Governance Award from MSBA, Dr. Stacy Albin Wilson received her Master CBM board member certification, and so look forward to presenting Stacy with that plaque that we received at the same time. So congratulations to Stacy.
There you go, Stace.
Congratulations.
When we get on to the business items next week, we will be presenting to you for your consideration and approval the St. Anne SRO Agreement. Board members, I do want to tell you that I did follow through and meet with the Ritenour High School Game Changers as recommended. That meeting was the end of last week, Friday, and talk through the SRO agreement. And the student game changers supported and agreed with having the SROs in the building. They spoke with the relationships that they maintain with the SROs that we have at Ritenour High School. They did speak on how the uniform can be triggering for them and for a number of students that they hear about based on conversations. And so the game changers did make a request that the SROs, while in the building serving Ritenour kids, that they be wearing Ritenour spirit wear or teacher professional dress. And so that was a recommendation that they had. Made sense to me. So I ran that recommendation past Elliot Miller, who's in charge of the SROs on the campus, and he thought that was a great idea as well. So that's something that will happen if you choose to approve this agreement, that while in the buildings to the greatest extent possible, the officers will be wearing spirit wear or teacher professional dress as opposed to uniforms. From time to time, there are substitute officers that would need to come in if one of the SROs gets pulled away. If you remember, as a part of the agreement, we're guaranteed to have 3 officers on campus at all times. But to the best of our ability, all of those officers would be in spirit wear, teacher professional dress the whole time. So, the game changers, I think, felt validated. I told the game changers that I'd run this feedback past the board as well. But the officers seem to be in favor of it.
That sounds good to me.
Yep.
As a follow-up also on our planning for action plan, I did follow through with Tabari Coleman and to plan the anti-bias training that would be provided to not only Ritenour administrators, but the SROs. And as a part of this plan also, it would be offered to the entire St. Anne Police Department. Took a conversation with Tabari earlier this week. We've scheduled a meeting for next Friday, September 11th at 9:45 in the morning. We're going to be meeting with the high school game changers. We're also going to be meeting with Dominic Phillips from the St. Anne Police Department to plan that training that will be delivered to the SROs as well as made available to the St. Anne PD. So I think it's an example of a purposeful partnership that could benefit our kids, could also benefit the community.
And the planning meeting, Chris, is next Friday?
Next Friday morning at 9:45. And that's happening during there's an advisory time right then. So the students will, during their advisory, the game changers will come together. It's a Zoom meeting. Tabari will be a part of it. Dominic Phillips will be a part of it. And that's how that's going to flow.
Chris, who's in the meeting besides the kids?
So Tabari.
Uh-huh.
And then Dominic Phillips. So the St. Anne Police Department hired a director of equity and inclusion, and that is Dominic Phillips. He's a Ritenour grad, and he has been with the department for about a year.
And so this is just a meeting between Tabari, St. Anne Police, and the game changers? No administrators or anything, no teachers, any of that?
Well, I'll be there, so outside of that, no, it's just a planning meeting to plan this, this training, but outside of that, no other administrators, no other teachers. It's just, it's the first planning meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So in addition to the St. Anne SRO agreement that we've discussed, Dr. LaChance will have some personnel recommendations coming to you on a personnel list. And then we always have the standard option or standard agenda item there, board member comments in open session. We do have some consent agenda items that would be coming to you next week. We have the annual assessment plan. As it's uploaded into board docs tomorrow. As you have any questions about the assessment plan, be happy to answer those questions, as would Ms. Hahn. And if you're interested in a deeper conversation around the assessment plan, we can have that next week. But at this point, it's scheduled to be on the consent agenda. We have the annual homebound services contract through Special School District that we'd be seeking your approval on through consent. This is not paying money, but it does set a rate that we would agree to pay, an hourly rate for Special School District to provide homebound services for students that require homebound services. And
So,
then
Ryan,
there's,
I just wanted to let you know that we haven't received that yet. So if we don't get that by Tuesday, we might have to move that to October.
Yeah, board members, this one always kind of comes in very close to time. So tentatively, it's on for next week. My hope would be, if you're flexible with that, if we receive that as late as Tuesday, I'd like to keep it on the consent agenda if you're comfortable with that. If we don't receive it, just don't want it to be a situation where we would get it in at the last minute. If that's the case, then we would push it to October or November.
Tuesday's fine.
Can I make a suggestion? If you don't have it, like whatever you're sending out tomorrow, why don't you just put in there a copy of what we approved last year, so that way we can review that, and then we get something on Tuesday, we can see what the differences are.
Good idea. I can do that.
Thank you.
And then the yearly St. Louis Community College agreement for dual enrollment. It's a yearly agreement that has to be approved, and that will be coming to you on consent as well. In the future, this is not a good time for it, but would love to have Dr. Elizabeth Perkins come in and speak to the board a little bit later in the year. Our dual enrollment program has really expanded. We've got a number of students that are going fully on campus at the Flow Valley campus, and so would love to have Dr. Perkins come in and speak to the board about our partnership that we feel pretty good about. And why I said this is just not a good time is, there's so much going on here. There's so much going on for Dr. Perkins that if we can give it a couple of months, perhaps November, December, it'd be a great time for when things slowed down a bit for her to come in and speak with the board on the partnership.
Sounds good.
And then 2 program evals coming your way, one on gifted ed and the other on facilities and grounds. And as you see those in board docs, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else.
I have a couple things.
Sure.
One was, I think all of us got a phone call. At least I got 2, because I got Penny's and mine. The person called twice, thinking one time they were calling Penny, one time calling me, about their kindergarten student at Wyland. It's just not working. Could we get them back in the building? I know Chris and I talked today a little bit about perhaps starting the kindergarten through 3rd graders to come back. He said his wife can't work. It normally works, but can't because she's got to be at home with, her child, and it's just not good. So I want to make sure everybody's aware of that. Do you have anything more on that, Chris?
So no, I talked to Jennifer about that today, and I also got an email from Lisa about that as well. It's the same gentleman. I think he's reached out to a number of board members. So at this point, I've not talked to the person yet, but I look forward to doing so.
Yeah,
got the information this afternoon.
Yeah, he was very pleasant, and yeah, I have that number if anybody. I told him that we might be talking about it tonight, and it's something that we are thinking about, but we don't know when it could happen, but we totally understand where he was coming from. Then the other thing is, I was informed that there is a company, and I think it's Herf Jones, who we use at the high school for yearbooks. They put out a pamphlet or flyer, whatever you want to call it, all about COVID, and they included it. They can include it in the yearbook, which, this is a historical time for all of us, um, and he services, I think, like one of the districts out in St. Charles, the whole district. But when he talked to the parent who shared it with me, they said, well, he only does the high school for us, and that each school does their own individual, has their own individual contracts with whatever companies. And I just thought maybe it would be a good thing for us to look into, to be included in the yearbooks. He did it for the ones for 1920, but if we're interested, or if we need more information, we can get in touch with him. But I thought that was a good idea. I know when I went to high school, all the summer activities came when you at the end of the summer to add to your yearbook that you got earlier in the year. So just something that I think we can think about and maybe get to the right people to see if anyone's interested in it. I don't know if there's a cost involved or or whatever. And I did get a copy of it, so I can forward that to whoever would like to see it. So I just wanted
Yes,
to.
I'd be happy to take a look at it. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So Ruth, is this?
Pardon me?
Is this a service or just sharing information?
It's something that Herf Jones put together. They're the ones that do our high school yearbook. They don't do the other schools' yearbooks.
But I'm saying, is it just information they're sharing?
It's all about the coronavirus, and how it's the thing that I saw. I think it was 14 pages, but it was like a kind of like a pamphlet you added to your yearbook, and it showed like what happened when, and gave information and just all that different kind of stuff.
Okay.
Those are the only two things I had.
I have something also. We all got a letter from a teacher about the kindergarten and the fact that it's really hard to engage kindergarten and probably first and second graders, but especially kindergartners. And I was going to have a question about that anyway, because I've talked to a couple of people that have kindergartners or first graders, and also my own daughter has a kindergartner this year. She's in the Parkway district, but she is just having a terrible time. And a lot of these parents are having to spend like a full day trying to engage and then re-engage when there's a break and get these kids to learn something. And my own granddaughter has already said more than once, oh, I hate school. And I think this is especially hard for kindergarten. And like I said, probably first, second. But in kindergarten, I mean, is there going to be, or can there be any conversation around the possibility of doing a half day for, for some of the students and a half day, for the other part of the students, to make things so much easier on the child and the parent? So
Penny, we have I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering if that was being discussed.
Yeah, what we do have is we have a virtual learning plan process that we've put in place where, if there's a need to deviate from the schedules that all students are getting for a variety of reasons, there's a process that buildings need to work from. So, that will be me reaching out to the parent that's calling with concerns of, it would be possible to create an alternate schedule possibly for a kindergarten student, but we just want to be clear and be purposeful about what that schedule would look like, just so it's not, we're just going to cut the day in half. It might be, some kind of modification in the morning, might be some kind of modification in the afternoon. We just want to have the team that's going to be making that decision, including the parent, be purposeful and thoughtful, and just so everybody's on the same page about what the day could look like. Because from my perspective, virtual learning can get away from us very quickly, because we do hear about concerns, and a lot of those concerns are my child needs to be able to do this during the day, or my child needs to be able to do this during the day. And as an organization, we're trying to prioritize learning. But we realize that there are ways that we have to accommodate students and staff, students and families. So we're trying to be purposeful, and Kratz Elementary created the first virtual learning plan yesterday. And so, that will be my follow-up with the gentleman that contacted the board at Weiland, is to reach out to his principal to discuss a virtual learning plan, just so it's clear about what's expected from the student, the family, and the school.
Okay.
Is it possible for some of the kids to actually come up to the school who don't have access to Wi-Fi or, an environment where they can learn?
So at this point, we're fully virtual. So we don't have any Ritenour students pre-K all the way up through 12 coming into the building. That, the thinking would be that's a part of phase 2. And we've got a phase 2 committee that's coming together that'll be made up of support staff and teachers and administrators and some parents and some students, where we'll talk through the phase 2 reentry plan, which provides parents choice of virtual or the hybrid. And we would want to, from my perspective, I think we start with our earliest learners first, to transition our earliest learners first back to school. And then we have conversations about our most vulnerable learners as well, students with IEPs and 504s and so on. So at this point, it's not a case-by-case basis where individual students would be coming back in person. Like if we're going to move to phase 2, we would do it as a district. Then at that point, students be coming back in person. But I think we'd want to start with the earliest learners first.
Yeah.
I had a question in regards to, I was under the impression that some of the schools, or that we were doing some type of virtual back to school activities with the families, where they would have an opportunity to engage in some learning how to utilize some of the software at the elementary levels.
So there was, in the return to learning plan, there was a virtual back to school entry that schools were were expected to follow through with. There wasn't a hard date on that, but it was a part of the plan that schools would have some type of virtual back to school event.
Okay. So I think there may be some opportunities surrounding that. What I'm hearing from a lot of the kindergarten and first grade families, yes, ditto that it's a long day, but then also like there are times where it seems like maybe the the teacher is also learning the software at the same time. And so then the family and the student is just kind of waiting on that process, and or they're waiting on other family members or parents to learn how to mute the child in the background or those type of things. So it kind of, for the students that are ready to go, it can be kind of daunting to keep them engaged, as well as maybe, I would say on our secondary levels, there was even some times this week where teachers were like, oh, I didn't know that we actually had class today. And they're sending out those type of messages to the students like, oh, I'm sorry I didn't send the classroom codes because I didn't know we were actually having class today. So I think there are some opportunities still about just what those standard expectations are, so that we can keep our students and families engaged during this process. We're all learning, and it's going to be challenges along the way, but there are some things I think there's still some basic opportunities surrounding standardization of what those expectations look like.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard the same thing, Lisa.
Yeah, and I mean,
At
yeah,
the secondary level. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's just opportunity, and I think it's just a matter of, okay, it's all new, but at the same time, what type of resources can we give people so that they feel empowered in that process? I know some families, like when they're on the lower levels, when they're in that waiting phase, they may have their child do a different activity while they're waiting, especially if they're waiting to get like into some of their, I think it's called specials at the elementary level. Let's say their art or PE library, they're waiting to get in because they're not allowed to go into a classroom unless the teachers let them in. So they're just like waiting. And they have to like send a separate email to let, so somebody will know like, hey, I'm waiting to let my child come in. And by the time they get in, they maybe have already started the book that the child is supposed to be listening to during that reading session. So I don't really know how all the dynamics and everything is set up, but I think that as we continue along the way, I'm encouraging families to contact the building principals to let them know exactly what their experiences are, what they are experiencing, what their challenges are, because each building probably has a process in place, and that's the ones that are going to be able to try to address it the quickest. On a district level, though, I still think there's opportunities, and I'm not exactly sure how or what we need to do on the secondary levels. If we're having our students pick their schedules in February, March of the year, of that previous year, I'm just not understanding why it's so challenging for schedules when we get back to school and they're all kind of like, oh, I didn't know, or I'm missing classes here. I'm just not understanding that disconnect there. And I really want us to look at what we can do to improve that process.
We've had conversations over the course of the last couple of weeks, and it is every year at Ritenour High School. We know that a piece of the puzzle is the success rate of students. We have to improve the success rate for students, because one of the factors is when students don't successfully pass a class, they might have to retake the class, or there's credit recovery, there's remediation that's a piece of the puzzle that can be late. Some of that information comes in after summer school, so it can be late July, but that is a small number. Out of 1,800, that's a relatively small number of students. That's a conversation I look forward to coming back to the board. We can have the high school speak on their scheduling process and help to understand it better, because it's a complex task, but something every year that even the first day of school is not complete.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Lisa, the one thing I would say is when you brought up about asking parents to contact their building administrator and everything, I think that is so important that we make sure that they're reaching out to them. I've seen a lot of posts out on social media, and just trying to encourage those families to reach out to their administration at their building, whether it's a principal or even reaching out directly to the teacher or something. We have to encourage them to do that, because we can't help them if we don't know that they need help. So I thank you for doing that. And I sent Dr. Kilbride this message earlier. I want to thank Leah Mosley. She is on all of the social media, and like she put out a list of all the building numbers and all the numbers for like attendance, and then the bus transportation information. And so, just having the people contact those places, they can get answers. I see several people, miss the bus, or the bus came earlier, the bus came late with their food, and they were concerned about, not having food, and the bus went back out and delivered the food. So everybody's willing to help, and everybody's, this is all a challenge. So we just need to keep encouraging people to make those phone calls, because that's the way that we're going to be able to help you. So, okay. Anything else?
Yeah, something must be wrong. It's 8 o'clock. We're done.
I know. We're making up for last month.
Yeah.
5.5 hours last month, 1 this year, or this month. So, yeah. All right. Well, everybody have a good evening. I will go ahead and, Doug, you can go ahead and stop our